have this knuckle next to this knuckle. You pick up the line easier. It also keeps from slamming your bail shut. Now the brand of reels that Mark sells are Akios. And this is made specifically for surf fishing. You'll notice the long spool, that's for more distance. And also the bail does not have a spring in it. Because spring-assisted bails tend to slam shut. Some of y'all may have experienced that when you throw really hard, the bail will slam shut. Well, number one, open the bail sideways. Number two, if you get a surf fishing reel, they don't have springs in them and you manually close the bail. So, we're going to do basic one-handed cast. Mark's going to help me. He's going to be able to walk out and hopefully retrieve this from the mud. Now this crazy thing right here, it's actually a sinker float made for fishing in trail races off the back of dams up in the Midwest. We're going to use it. Hopefully it won't stick in the mud. And Mark, as soon as this thing hits, I need to hand it off to you so that the line won't go so much over there in the weeds. We've got a little crosswind. And who's on the dock? That's the worst place to be. Sorry, buddy. You need to come back up here. In case this goes sideways, that's the worst place to be standing. All right, so I'm going to kind of aim a little bit over to the side of the boat. Once again, this is just a one-handed cast. I'm going to put my right arm up in the air, grab my left arm here. I'm just going to move my weight from my back foot to my front foot. Kind of like trying to hit a pop fly in baseball or softball. So, to get more energy, we can incorporate our waist muscle to do a little bit of sidearm cast so that the rod will start loading with your waist muscle before you do the pull down. But first we got to graduate to the punch pull, I'm sorry. So that cast was just from here, just by pulling down. Next, we're going to do the cast that I cast 90% of the time, is punch pull. Instead of starting up here, I'm actually going to use my right arm also, and all I'm going to do is punch it up. As soon as I start moving up, the rod starts to load. And then when I get up to here, I'm going to go here. So the punch pull gives you a little more power instead of just that one arm cast. Now I watched a very good pompano fisherman when I was first learning to cast long distance. I'm like, what is that goofy guy doing? Literally, he would walk out in the surf like this. He'd get his target and do that one-arm cast. That's what he was comfortable with. He caught a lot of fish. Because it's not just about how far you can throw it, it's throwing it in the right spot. Get back to that one. Rod. What I'm going to do now is simply I'm going to do punch pull. So once again, the power is in your left arm, but you start get loading the rod as soon as you start punching up in the air. Drop right there. Wait for my retriever to get ready. Really appreciate Mark helping me. Helped me a lot over the years. Alright, so now once again, knuckle to knuckle, open the bail, throwing with 40-pound test, and transfers into 14. So this is just going to be the same cast. Instead of starting here, I'm going to start at eye level. If y'all go practice this, remember, never start lower than eye level, okay? If you go back down to here, you're going to go back to your old ways, and your left arm just becomes this limp noodle doing absolutely nothing. You got to come to here, you got to go high to be able to pull down. So this one, starting at eye level, this is called the punch pull. In order to get distance, you have to get elevation. I not get elevation that time. That was more like a line drive. So the ideal release point is about 45 degrees, right about there. And on this next cast, I'm going to do the same punch pull, but I'm going to release at 45 degrees. An important part is watch where my rod stops and watch where I keep my rod. Most people, when they cast, if they cast at 45 degrees, that's cool. But they let gravity take over and the rod lowers. Now, which way is the line going? It's going up. Which way is the rod pointing? Horizontal. It creates a tremendous amount of friction at the tip. There's not even extra friction on the eyes, but learning how to cast farther a lot of times is learning how to reduce friction. So when you cast, I call it the Statue of Liberty. When you cast, right there. And you want to keep the rod pointed where the line is going. Even after this thing reaches its apex and it starts to go down, keep your rod pointed at the line. Don't let gravity take over and bring your rod back horizontal. Now this bait caster, when I fish by myself, I strict 100% bait casters because they'll cast farther with the same amount of energy and they're easier on your bait. But even if you never come over to the dark side, don't worry, you can catch tons of fish with a spinning reel. My first 30 years of surf fishing was nothing but spinning reel. Drop. Now watch where my rod ends. Try to get that 45-degree launch. Oh yeah, don't let your sinker hit the ground. You see my rod's already started to load. If you rock backwards, what happens? Then you're getting a herky-jerky cast. That'll be the end of your want to learn how to throw these. You got to be smooth, okay? And you've already, even if it was spinning reel, if you rock backwards, you're taking some of the load off the rod. So right about there. Now, the world record holder that taught me, I did this for an hour for him. All I did was wind up. He said, my next cast is only as good as you put the line back on it. Do not embarrass me. That's the key about throwing bait casters. You've got to pack the line on there flat. If you have high and low spots, you're going to put it back or crack off. When that line cracks at that high speed, it makes it sound like a track. All right, so any questions about what you've seen so far? About the one-handed cast or the punch pull?
Length really matters?
Length of the rod really matters, but what matters even more is what the rod is made out of, okay? I can take a 10-foot surf rod that's designed well and outcast a 15-foot surf rod that's made cheaply out of fiberglass. Our rods are made out of carbon and graphite, stores more energy, is lightweight. It'll just throw farther because what it's made out of, the way it stores the energy and releases it. Length does matter. We only manufacture 11, a 12, and a 13-footer. And the reason being, I mean, a lot of people, if they only fish Ponte Vedra Beach, they won't need to cast far. So 11-footer is ideal for them, maybe even a 10-footer. But the way the rods are designed, at least our rods are designed, the 11-footer will throw a 3-ounce sinker 300 feet. The 12-foot rod will throw a 4-ounce sinker 400 feet. And the 13-foot will throw a 5-ounce sinker 500 feet. But it's a lot more enjoyable to fight a whiting on a light 11-foot rod than is that big 13-foot rod. That's the 13 there. All right. So we'll do one more over the head. I want to get that right 45 degree before we move on to the next thing where you incorporate your torso. So once again, 45 degrees, tight drag by the way. That's the other thing about spinning reels. When you go to cast long distance, you need to tighten your drag down. You're not letting that line slipping through your finger. Okay? When you put a lot of torque on these rods, it will actually pull drag unless you tighten it down. But you also got to remember when you get back to the rod holder to loosen it up. Because the last thing you want is that big trophy fish and no drag. tighten down tight. Now, that's not going to end well for you. So you just got to remember to go back and set the drag. And I like to drag only about 4 pounds, because that big redfish, that big stingray, that big shark is going to come along. You got that drag light, it's a lot better. You have a better chance of catching the fish. All right, so once again, punch, pull, let go to 45 and hold it. Manual close, get it out of the seat. All right, the next thing will be to incorporate your stomach muscles, your torso. And this is called off the ground cast, where I'm actually going to put the sinker over here on the ground so that I can turn sideways and get my stomach muscles involved before punch pull. But it comes back to punch pull, because you don't do anything except perfect punch pull. When I do private casting lessons, I consider them graduating when they crack 300 feet, 100 yards. Because without punch pull, most people can't get 100 yards. And then we want to go next level, incorporate off the ground. Well, that's going to take you to the 400-foot level, or the 450-foot level. And then finally, the third phase is the pendulum cast, which incorporates a pendulum, torso muscles, and punch pull. But once again, for fishing, 90% of the time, that's all I use, is punch pull. I want to be accurate where I'm casting it, so that's the basic cast. Here, we're going to look at off the ground. It's going to be simply, I'm going to put the weight over here, I'm going to put the rod tip low, I'm going to turn, incorporate my stomach muscles. That's rubber coated steel, by the way. Too much of my wife's good cooking. So I'm going to turn, the rod's going to be loaded halfway even before I use my arms. But in order to fully load this 13-footer, I need a little more giddy up on it. So you don't need to back up. Very good. I'm going to move this here just in case.
Yeah, you don't want that.
I don't want to catch that.
Nope.
Now these Akios reels, they have a magnetic cast control and they have centrifugal brakes to keep me from backlashing. Now, if it does backlash, that happens occasionally. But you're throwing into the wind, you turn up your magnets tighter. If you're throwing with the wind, you go all the way to no magnet at all. Just let the centrifugal brake inside do the job. But once I let go of this, there's no touching the spool. You touch the spool when it's going 5,000 RPM, that's just a blister. That's all that is. So off the ground. So instead of coming to here, I'm going to come over to here. I'm going to turn my back to the water and incorporate my stomach muscles before I use my arms. Tip to the ground.